Welcome to part 4 in Maelstrom in a month. In the last few episodes, we made the mask and the Mantis Blades. In this episode, we're covering clothes. Because of these guys' style, most of the stuff can be found in my closet. Their fashion's pretty simple. If you've ever seen a 40-year-old man at a metal show, you've probably seen Maelstrom fashion. And considering I'm a 40-year-old man, finding these clothes is pretty easy. That means the only thing we really need to work on is the jacket. So, let's get building. To start, for the decals I'm making, I got them off of a website here called Valency Graphics. They offer a wide range of high-res vector PNGs of various brands and gang logos in the game. I downloaded the Maelstrom package and imported that into Inkscape. I'd already gotten the measurements for my jacket for what I wanted, so scaling these to size was fairly easy. Only extra step I needed was to get rid of the solid infill, making it an outline, because when I print these out, I don't want to waste all that extra printer ink. Before I could tape my pages together, I needed to cut my page margins. My printer's pretty old, so I can't speak for newer printers, but I know mine won't print to edge, so I have to cut this excess off first. I kinda messed up when I made this. If I cropped the image just a little bit on the side, I could have squeezed this onto 4 pages rather than 6. But the overhang from the extra pages was nice for when I go to do my transfer. Speaking of which, instead of using regular printer paper for this, I used cardstock paper. It's thicker than normal paper, so when I go to do my transfer, it won't warp from the paint, which will help keep my image more consistent. Now that my pages are taped together, time to cut everything out. I used an X-Acto knife for this. One thing to note, since there are a lot of free-floating objects in this image, like the nose and eyes, I need to leave a strip of paper to help hold them in place. I made sure to do this multiple times, in case one of them were to rip. With all that cut out, time to transfer. I separated my skull and lettering and worked on placement. And that's where I ran into an issue with my lettering. I got this jacket years ago for another costume, and it came de-stressed. The portion I wanted to put the lettering, there was already rips in the coat, meaning that if I wanted to transfer over that, it'd be missing the M's on the end. So I chose to skip the lettering for now and focused on the skull. After I had the template where I wanted it, I used some acrylic paint and a small paint roller. The paint roller was from Walmart's Arts and Crafts section, sold around the paints and brushes. I gave this several light coats, doing passes at different approach angles until everything was filled in evenly. I didn't apply a lot of pressure, nor did I go heavy on the paint, because I didn't want to rip the thin pieces of paper that were holding the nose and eyes in place. Too much force would rip it, and too much paint would oversaturate the paper and weaken it, making it easier to rip. Light passes helped keep everything intact. Once I got it pretty well covered, I then had to fill in the gaps left by those thin paper strips. I just needed a paintbrush for this. This took a lot of passes too, until those gaps were filled in and blended in with the rest of the paint. and from there, I hung it up to dry while I worked on the next part. If you look at the Maelstrom in-game, you'll notice that a lot of them have spikes under jackets. These spikes aren't your traditional studs that you can just buy, so to get this look, I was gonna have to make them myself. I had a ton of leftover foam dowels, so my idea was to just cut and sand them into spikes. If I remember right, I cut them all into about 1.5 inch pieces. And to carve them out, I only cut them 4 times, rolling them 1/4, slicing at an angle, and rolling again. That would be enough for me to sand later. I did a rough estimate of how many I needed. If my memory serves me correct, my original estimate was about 38, but that ended up getting bumped up to the high 40s, so to be safe, I made about 50. And there we go, all cut. Time to sand. These were fun to sand. There wasn't a whole lot for me to hold on to, so needless to say, a bunch of these flew out of my hands and across the room. But other than that, yeah, sanding. I didn't paint the spikes. I figured the flat black of the foam fit pretty well with the aesthetic. Before I glued them on, I grabbed my ruler and figured out how far apart I wanted them. I started with the front, figuring out how things fit in these front sections, and then using that spacing reference and applying it to the back, marking every spike placement with a silver pen. I drenched that spot then in contact cement, allowing it to soak into the jacket's fibers before drying. That way I knew for sure that it would grab onto the spikes. I worked on this in sections. As I waited for the cement on the jacket and spikes to dry, I started measuring out on the other side of the jacket. And by the time I was done with that, the spikes were ready to lay down. And I just repeated that process across the jacket. Also, if any spikes were to land on a distressed portion of the jacket, I just didn't put one down. End result looks pretty good. Up next were the sleeves. I forgot to record this part, so enjoy this reenactment. I originally tried to roll my sleeves up, but my cyber arms didn't like that, so I figured I'd cut these at the elbows. I just used my cutting wheel and cut up the sleeves at the elbows. And voila, short sleeves. To distress the sleeves then, so that they look like they've been worn, I took out a sanding block and just roughed up the ends. I hit it from every angle, both inside and out. It loosens the fibers, breaks it apart, and tugs at anything loose. Do it long enough, and your ends will be nice and frayed. And last, the front decals. This is the same process as the print on the back, so no need to explain it again, just enjoy the B-roll. think we're looking pretty cool now. Scary part is, we only have 2 days left and nothing's painted. Which we'll cover in the next and final part.
Get in, loser. We're going to the convention.
Sable?
S. Just S. Only people who know me real well can use my real name.
And I'm Kay. Only people who...
Shut up, Kiana. So, getting in or what?
Well, I'll see you in the next one.